In the first part of this video, I looked at downloading and installing Edius 11 and then setting up your user and system settings. Now I want to look at some things which are possible problems. These are things I would say don't even bother with if everything is working fine. Now looking at the following list, you might never need to fiddle with any of this. If everything in Edius 11 is working fine, don't bother. These are just things that have popped up and I have had to change on different systems. In particular, I always do the firewall stuff, which is the very first thing I will be going through on every system that I set up. And of course, if you want extra help, you can get in touch and I can do things like remote control sessions and take over people's PCs and try and help sort things out if you're having issues. Also, don't look at this and say, oh, Edius 7's got loads and loads of problems. No, computers are a pain. Sometimes you need to change things inside of them to make programs work nicely. Especially if they're making your computer work really hard, which is what video editing programs do. Anyway, let's get on and look at it. The first thing I want to go through is to deal with settings with your antivirus and firewall programs. Because all these different windows are now talking to other programs, so when you're exporting something, it is actually sending it off to another program. Mink is another program, but Edius talks to it. And the bin is now linked to Mink. So because of that, sometimes you'll find that your antivirus and firewall settings can actually get in the way of Edius working properly. So for example, you might pop up something in the bin and it comes up with a message like cannot connect to blah 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 blah. Or you're starting Edius and it says, oh, service not started. And you're scratching your head about what it is. Most of the time, this is actually caused by an antivirus program or a firewall blocking Edius from talking to the other parts of Edius. Because there's different programs, it's one program talking to another, and the computer can stop that. So now I'm going to go through how I would sort that out using the basic Windows antivirus, which is Windows Security or Windows Defender. Now obviously there's loads of antiviruses, so how you add these things into other antiviruses will vary. I tend to use Windows Defender because it's actually pretty good. The other one I have used is Avast, which I know some people don't like, but there's a free one out there. You could just stick with Windows Defender and just make sure you don't go on any dodgy websites and you'll probably be okay. And since Windows Defender is the program that everybody's going to have, I am going to show you how I would deal with these kind of problems using that. Now I'm going to go through the advice that I know right now. It might change as Edius develops, so if you go to the Grass Valley forums, there is a sticky thread on here called Tips from the Moderators, which is where a couple of Grass Valley people, Steve and Pat, put in information on how to add in this kind of stuff, add in exclusions for Edius so the antivirus doesn't get in the way. And they do update it from time to time. So I'm going to tell you what I'm doing right now, but if something doesn't work, pop onto that thread and have a look at it because there might be some slight changes from when I made this video. Anyway, let's have a look at that. In Windows Defender, I just go into the Start menu and type Windows Security and it pops up with this window. Then I'll go to Virus and Threat Protection, go to Virus and Threat Protection Settings, and here there'll be two things. So the first is I'll add in some exclusions. If you click on that, you can choose to add in a few folders, and I like to add in the Grass Valley folders. Now, if you don't do this and everything works, it's not a problem. You just might find that sometimes the bin doesn't pop up properly or sometimes the job monitor doesn't start. Try shoving this lot in first. So I've added the Grass Valley folder in. I'm also going to add in under Programs Data the Grass Valley folder. And on top of that, I am going to add in the Vistitle folder. Vistitle makes its own little folder on the C drive and I pop that one in there as well. So I add those in as exclusions. Basically means the antivirus isn't going to bother too much with those folders, which shouldn't be a problem. Then I'll go to the firewall and choose this thing, allow an app through the firewall. This pops up with a box where you can't do anything yet until you click Change Settings. Then you can go down to this button, allow another app, and this is where you start to add in apps. Now this is what might change. There might be more apps to add in, or maybe some of these you won't have to add in. But I will click on the Browse button and find, for a start, Programs Drive, Edius 11. There we are, Edius, add that in, click Add, allow another app, and then find a few more apps. So I will add in EH Render Engine and render worker, both in the Edius 11 folder. I will also add in the Grass Valley Edius hub folder, under render service, these two, render service and render host. And then finally, because Mink is being more included in Edius, I've been adding that one in recently as well. So go to the Mink folder, choose Mink, and add that in. Now there might be others that pop up, so please go to the Grass Valley forums and have a look at what the Grass Valley people are recommending as the best things to add in. Typically it's caused problems in Edius 10 with the job monitor not working. So you'll actually go to export something, it does it in the background, and it doesn't start. And a lot of time that's been down to the antivirus program. In Edius 11, the problems we've been getting are things like Mink or the bin not displaying at all. Mostly that sorts it out. Now I will try and update the description below with any other things that you might want to add into your firewall exceptions and so on, but please do check out that thread on the Grass Valley forums as well. Just an aside, sometimes when I've installed a computer, I've gone into Edius immediately after the installation started, set it all up, and Vistitle isn't there. Now I've installed Vistitle, I've activated Vistitle, why is Vistitle not there? Actually what solves it most of the time is just reboot. In fact, anytime you install something really important like an entire program, I would suggest you reboot afterwards. Reboot the computer, then Vistitle came up. Just sometimes when I've installed it, it doesn't appear straight away. Just only the very first time, then it appears after that. Another little problem I had when I was upgrading somebody from Edius 10 and they'd ordered the DVD writing option is that I couldn't install the DVD writing menu templates that I'd downloaded. It had Edius 10 on there, and it had the Edius 10 DVD writing templates. It had tried to copy them over for me. Didn't quite work properly because they weren't the right ones. So what I had to do is to go into the computer, go into programs and features, and then uninstall the Edius 10 DVD writing templates and install the Edius 11 ones. There is something else that's worth looking at to do with your display settings inside of Windows. This I've particularly noticed if you do have QuickSync and an NVIDIA card, so you've basically got two graphics cards inside the machine, is something that I've had to fiddle with. Again, if you're not having problems, don't bother about this. So what you have to do is you have to get to your display settings. So right click on the desktop and choose Display. Then go down the list, so this thing might be off the bottom of the screen, scroll down a bit to where you see Graphics. Click on it and you come up with this screen. Now what you've got to do here is to add in Edius to your list of programs down here and set some settings up for it. Underneath this Add an App, you have the option of Desktop or Microsoft Store app. We'll just go for Desktop app. Then choose Browse and then find Edius on your computer, which should be under Program Files, Grass Valley, Edius 11, and then here, Edius, and click Add. Once you've done that, Edius turns up in the list down here and you have this button for Options. Click on that. And you'll notice here, I've got two graphics cards in this system. So I've got my Intel graphics card, which is the thing that does QuickSync, and I've got my NVIDIA card. Windows is basically deciding which of those to use in preference for graphics performance. And I found sometimes it's nice to come in here and set it on one of these two. Now, if you're having some issues, particularly with the QuickSync side or some sort of graphics issues on screen, come in here, tick that, start Edius, see if it goes away. If not, come out of Edius, then come into here, tick the other one, then go back into Edius and see if the problem goes away. And generally I find I'm sticking this on the Intel one, and it seems to improve the way that Edius performs in various ways, or might stop it crashing if you're using QuickSync and so on. But basically it's worth trying. Just come in here, tick that, save it, see what happens. So obviously I'm using Windows 11 here. That option is also in Windows 10. And I had to do the same things with Edius X and Windows 10. It's not unique to Edius 11. I've also had to do it with some of my other programs as well. Particularly had to do it on laptops more than desktops. Now if you've only got the one graphics card, then it won't be choosing between the two. If you only have an NVIDIA card and it doesn't see an Intel card, then you're not choosing between the two. This also has an effect if the Intel card isn't even working, so if you haven't even got a screen plumbed into it. So worth just coming in here, switching those, see what happens, see if it makes a difference to whatever your problem is. My first go-to would definitely be the antivirus programs. This is something I would come to after that. Edius can still use QuickSync to encode and help playback video. There were problems using 12th and 13th generation processors. Now I've got a 14th generation processor in this machine. I haven't yet found out whether the same problems exist. The problems were to do with playing back stuff, not encoding. So it sticks some H.265 on the timeline. It'd be trying to use QuickSync to help play it back, and it would cause it to stutter, sometimes cause it to crash and peculiar things. To get QuickSync going, you have to have a monitor plugged into the QuickSync display connection on your computer, as well as into the NVIDIA card. But if you want to see whether it's going, come down to Importer and Exporter, and AVCHD, and there's this Use Hardware Decoder tick box. If that's ticked, it's trying to use QuickSync to help play back H.264. Under HEVC, there's also this one, Use Hardware Decoder. This one, under AVCHD, if you don't see it at all, that means your computer either hasn't got QuickSync or it's not working. In other words, maybe you haven't got a monitor plugged into the QuickSync graphics port as well as your main video card. This one just disappears completely. This one is always there, but again, if QuickSync's not working, that's just grayed out. So it's there, but grayed out. This obviously means it is trying to use it. Now, I've only recently set up my 14th gen machine, so I haven't done a lot of testing, so I'm not entirely sure whether it is fixed or not. My feeling, because they didn't fix it with the 12th and 13th, is it probably isn't. So I would use it, and then if I'm getting a bit of crashing, I would untick that and untick that, save it, restart Edius, and use it like that. Because the processor itself is actually really, really fast. Does a pretty good job of decoding. It'd be nicer if this worked, but the stuff I'm doing works without it. But that's where your QuickSync is, and you might want to turn it off if you're using a later generation processor. Pretty much most of Edius 11, once you get into it and it's set up, you've got new stuff. The rest of it works the same as before. Obviously, they have revamped the bin, and they've revamped Mink. Mink used to pop up as part of the source browser, and now it pops up here. And with my screen set to be large fonts and all on one screen, it's actually a bit of a mess because you've got the folder list there. I mean, it's all squeezed up a bit. Let me just bring in some clips, and obviously everything's squeezed up, so I'm just going to pop down the properties windows there so I can see things a little bit better. But they have revamped the bin and Mink, so they are what they call HTML panels. So they're made up like web pages. In other words, they just redone the way this thing displays. But one of the side effects of that is you actually can change the scale of everything in here with a keyboard shortcut. Hold down on Control, stick the mouse over the top and use the mouse wheel, and you can change the size of everything, which is how you can zoom into web pages, because it's effectively a web page. You can do the same with Mink. And I've seen a couple of people on the forums saying, I can't stand it, my project folder's huge. That's because accidentally they've come over here, held down on Control and used the mouse wheel, because it's the same way you zoom around the timeline. If you just had your mouse over here, you're suddenly making the bin bigger. I actually quite like it because you can change the size of the typeface in there. If you want it to be smaller, so you can get more pictures with a bit of text, you can change it just by doing that. So I quite like it. It's just confusing if you don't know it does that. Same thing in the job window. So it's the job window, Mink, and the bin all do that kind of thing. Now, if you are upgrading from a previous version of Edius, it will have taken all of your previous settings, so all of your effects settings and everything else. And all of this stuff will have already been arranged. You'll have your pre-made layouts and everything else in there. And it wouldn't have even taken you to that thing of where do you want to put your basic project folder. It would just take the settings from previous projects. Sometimes this causes a problem. You won't find out until you're using Edius, and then weird things happen. Like, for example, some effects aren't turning up in the list of effects, or I was using Boris Continuum OFX plugin through the new OFX bridge, and not all of the Boris effects were turning up. And it turned out that my problem was my user profile. So if you're using it and you get some weird stuff, sometimes it's a good idea just to clear out the user profile and start again to see if that cures it. The user profile is stored on the C drive under users. Then you go to the folder with your username. Then you go to app data. Now app data might be hidden. This is a hidden folder as a default. And if you can't see it, you've got to come up to these little dots. Go to options. This is in Windows 11, but it's pretty much the same in Windows 10. Go to options, click on view and say show hidden files and folders. I always have that shown. If that's ticked, then you can see app data, roaming, Grass Valley, Edius. And here you can see the folders with the user profile. So I've got Edius 9 on this system as well as Edius 11. Let's pop into Edius 11 and that's all my user stuff. Now, if my user profile's got messed up, you really want to get rid of all that and start Edius again. So I'll close down Edius. Now you could just select it and delete it, but this is something you do when you might have a problem with a system. And this might not be the solution. So what I like to do is I will just make up a little folder on the desktop and then I'll move all that stuff out of the Edius 11 folder. So now it's empty. Then start up Edius, and here you can see I've got to exactly the same thing I had before, which is basically choose a folder, make up a new project, choose a preset, but all of this stuff has been reset to the defaults. And I'm back with my stuff spread out over 2 screens and all the rest of it. Now, if I do that and whatever my problem is not solved, the simplest solution actually would be come out of Edius, bring up your user folder again, delete all that lot, go to my folder where I copied all my original settings and then just move it all back in. And now those settings are back there. But I do that sometimes if I have some weird problems. But having done that, now I'm going to get back into Edius and it's remembered all the settings that I've changed. Anyway, that's gone through the basics of setting up Edius 11. I hope that's been helpful. If you have any questions about Edius 11, please get in touch, david@dvctraining.co.uk. You can obviously go to my website, www.dvctraining.co.uk, where you can find out more information about Edius and my various tutorials for it. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video, because I'll be doing more videos on new stuff in Edius 11 as they come along. And I'll see you next time.